So officially welcome. I am Suzi Lula, and I am so happy to both have you all with me, but also to be doing this particular course. It's called From Boundaries to Bridges. We had just done a course called From Battles to Boundaries. And this is taking the idea of boundaries to the next level. So as a coach, I've been a coach for over 20 years now. I'm also mom to a 15-year-old son. So I can tell you that there is no question that I get asked more about relationship in general, both with our children, with our spouses, our partners, our family members, our in-laws, our co-workers, than how to navigate the world of boundaries. And it seems as though when we are working in this area and trying to set effective boundaries, we end up creating more separation and more distance and not as much connection and closeness and intimacy. And so I wanted to do this class because A, it's the question I receive most, but also because what I found in my work is that boundaries is so misunderstood, and it's actually time to change the paradigm of boundaries from something that is off-putting and distance creating to something that is intimacy inducing and creating true connection. So in this class today, I'm going to prove out to you all that it is not only possible to set effective boundaries, but to set effective boundaries and create connection and intimacy at the same time. So welcome. I'm so happy to have you all. We've had well over 1,000, maybe 2,000 people enroll in this course. And that again tells me that this area and topic of boundaries is one that is so needed and so necessary, because at the end of the day, we all want to feel connected to each other. We all want to feel intimately connected. And so we're needing to learn how to set boundaries and stay connected to the other individuals and individuals around us. So thank you for taking your time and investing your time and your energy to be here today. And I'm going to be also telling you about the extension of this course, because we're going to be diving deeper for a 4-week class so that you guys can practice this in your own life. And by the end of the 4 weeks, guarantee you that you will yourself know how to create effective boundaries in your world and experience that deep connection that all of us are longing to have, both inside of ourselves, with our children, and with all those around us. So before we officially begin, let's just take a nice deep breath in together and exhale. Let's let go of anything and everything that's come before this moment, because I know whether you're watching live or on the replay, it has taken you some kind of effort to be here, especially if you're a parent or maybe you're watching from work. There is something that you needed to arrange in your life to create the space for you to be here and present. So let's let go of everything that's come before this moment so that we can remind ourselves that there is nothing more important than investing in our own inner relationship where boundaries are concerned, so that we can create the intimacy and the connection in our world, in our relationship, in our life that we are truly seeking. So Trine is saying that she would love that, to have boundaries and intimacy at the same time. Stephanie is saying intimacy and boundaries at the same time. So we're calling ourselves present right now. We're setting an intention that over the next 30, 40, 50 minutes here together, that we are each and all going to leave with a heightened awareness and a heightened skill set of how to set effective boundaries and create intimacy and connection at the same time. So welcome. You might want to get out your journal, have a cup of tea. I'm also doing a cleanse right now, so I have my glass of water. Make sure that you all are hydrating. You have your journals. We're going to be writing a lot in the chat section, but if you're watching on the replay, you might want to write in your journal. So the first thing we want to do is clarify some confusion around why boundaries are so off-putting. Think about how you yourself were raised. Think about yourself as a child and think about the energy in your home where boundaries and discipline and authority was concerned. And in the chat box, or if you're watching on the replay, just write in your journal. But if you're here live with us, write in the chat box, what was the energy that you were raised in where setting boundaries were concerned? So I'm speaking about things like children are to be seen but not heard. In my home, I was raised with a very matriarchal system. And so whatever my mom said was how it goes. I had no voice. I was expected to be compliant. So what was the energy in your home? Were you allowed to have discussions about boundaries? Was it more authoritative? Was it punitive? Were you threatened? Were you punished? Just give a word. Was it fraught with conflict and anxiety? Was it peaceful and co-creative? Just give me in the chat box a little bit of an idea of the energy in which you were raised where boundaries are concerned. So in my home, there was a lot of conflict, and whatever the authority said went, right? So Selena is saying all or nothing. Jessica, my mom ruled. We were afraid to upset her. She was compliant. Seriousness. Seriousness was treasured, or compliance was treasured, excuse me. My parents had all the authority. My brother and I had no voice. Exactly. Boundaries were set with anger. How many of you had that? Boundaries were set with anger. Mom was the boss, excuse me. Mom was the boss until 14. Then dad, and no boundaries at all. So there's that seesaw. Mom, authoritative, or dad, no boundaries at all. Horrible conditions that had to be met, or else. It lacked a window for personal agency. It's a really beautiful term, personal agency. This is a term we're going to be speaking about where boundaries are concerned. Very important. So he's saying that in his home, because the conditions were horrible, there was no space for any kind of development or cultivation of personal agency, to stay anchored and rooted in your own sovereign self, your own sovereign spirit, and your own sovereign authority. I had to be the good girl and meet my parents' needs. So she was set up to have to meet her parents' needs, and she never challenged that. I was raised with a lot of anger and violence, so a lot of fear. Do as I say, not as I do. Never questioned it, no conflict. Conflict and drama, and then silence. Don't talk about it. Exactly correct. Similar in my home. Boundaries were blurred. Mom ruled, but ended up parenting her also. So there you were. As many of us, we were placed in the child role and the adult role. We were placed in the child role not to have a voice and to be compliant. And then we were expected to take care of our parents' emotions. Either not enough boundaries or angry boundaries. Fighting about boundaries, anger, afraid to lose love, very, very common. Afraid to lose love, very conditional. And I find myself perpetuating that. So this brings us to the next point, that often we find ourselves as parents, as spouses, as partners, as friends, as sister-in-laws, as brother-in-laws, in these different areas with our coworkers. We find that we either perpetuate what was done unto us, or we swing to the opposite side of the pendulum. So this is where I want to talk about next, that boundaries are very misunderstood. So not many of us were raised in an unconditionally loving family from ages 0 to 6, those early formative years. The love was very conditional. And so we end up either perpetuating this in our own relationship, or we go to the opposite end of the spectrum. So if there was a lot of bullying and conflict and punishment and threats and yelling and blaming and shaming and judgment and criticism in our own families, either we tend to carry that on, or we tend to go to the opposite side of the spectrum and become very permissive or question our own abilities around boundaries. Should we even be setting them? Is this an effective boundary? So we end up as adults with many, many questions about the boundary setting experience itself. And you can only look to our political arena, especially here in the United States, but in almost every country, almost. Not a lot. We have some Trinays from, we have some individuals from more of the Danish countries and Switzerland. There's a few countries that have it better than we do, but I think of like the John Lennon song, Imagine. Imagine there's no countries. And when you think of our own political arena in the West, especially, when you think of our president now is talking about building a wall between our country and Mexico. There was the Great Wall of China. So in the world of boundaries, you can even think of those physical descriptions of walls. And this is how, even if we don't intend to, in the cultural ethers, we have been taught that boundaries have to do with walls. Boundaries have to do with protection. Boundaries have to do with separation. Boundaries have to do with protecting ourselves, defending ourselves. And I'm here to tell you that it is time that we evolve our consciousness and evolve our ideas about boundaries. Because now, especially in the parental arena, we have become so disempowered where boundaries are concerned. We're misunderstanding. We're confused that either we need to be authoritative and punishing and threatening, or we need to be permissive with no boundaries and allow our children or others to sort of run amok. And so if you find yourself in any way, shape, or form on that seesaw, this is the takeaway for today. You're setting yourself up, and the best thing to do if you find yourself on that seesaw, I'm either too permissive or I'm too authoritative, you want to get off of the seesaw altogether. We're looking for the fulcrum point in the center that is going to show you it has nothing to do with the boundary itself. It has to do with the delivery of the boundary. So I'm going to say that again. This is not about whether you set a boundary or whether you are permissive. It is about finding your own values, finding your own boundaries, and then delivering those boundaries to the other person so that the other person and your boundary is received in a spirit of open-heartedness, of collaboration, of connection, of interchange, of conversation, of dialogue. There are two individuals in the relationship. There's the individual that is communicating the boundary, and there is the individual that is receiving the boundary. And so if you create as your highest intention your own delivery system with your boundaries and create a space for the other person to receive your boundary and allow them to be part of the boundary setting process, I absolutely guarantee you, you are going to create intimacy and connection. This takes more energy. This takes more consciousness. This is going to call for from you that you are going to have to heal some of your own old triggers. It is going to call for from you that you are not reactive, but that you are in conscious choice. But I guarantee you, when you get clear about your own boundary and when you get clear about your delivery method and your delivery energy and your delivery system, I guarantee you that you will be met with cooperation. So Jennifer's asking, what does that look like? So we're going to talk about that in a second. I just want to take one moment and discern between the word compliance and the word cooperation. So if my son, as I said, is 15, let's say that one of my boundaries is that he is to be home by 10 p.m. Let's say that he texts me at 9:30 asking if he can stay out later than 10 p.m., which he's going to do. There is a difference between me asking for compliance from him and me asking for cooperation with him. So to answer Jennifer's question, what does that look like? If I'm seeking compliance from him, then what it means is I said 10 p.m. You are not to push back. You are not to ask me for an extension. I said 10 p.m. That's the way it is. If I'm seeking cooperation, then before I even set the boundary, in my own consciousness, I have plenty of space for him to push back. Because think about it. When you were 15 and someone set an arbitrary curfew boundary for you, didn't you want to talk about it? Didn't you want to have a conversation about it? Didn't you want to have a dialogue about it? He's 15. He's looking for his own autonomy, his own independence. So if I squelch all that, yes, he may come home at 10 p.m. But inside of himself, he will be filled with all of the emotions that you all just put in this chat box about the way that you were raised. He may or may not show up at 10 p.m., but he's going to be upset about it inside of himself if I didn't give him a voice. And he's going to either comply or he's going to rebel. Compliance and rebellion are ways that we act out that our needs have not been met. And so it's important, if you're looking at coworkers or your spouse or your child, and they're either overly compliant or overly rebellious, you don't want to so much get rid of it as much as you want to notice it so that you can recognize they are acting out a need that you have not been able to assist them to get met. It's the only time we act out. Every time we act out, it's because we have unmet needs and we don't know how to satisfy those needs in our own way without acting out. So if my son then pushes back and says, can I stay out later? I absolutely am to create a space to hear what he has to say, why he has to say it. And of course, he's going to say, my friends can stay out later. You're so mean. You are too strict. You don't trust me. And then it is for me to welcome this. I welcome this, you guys. I welcome this. Here's why. That's a dialogue. Didn't you most, when you were a child, want to have a dialogue and a connection with your parents and those in authority positions, your teachers, your elders? So when my son, pushes back, I say, of course you want to stay out later. Sometimes I change my mind. Most of the time, I really think about my boundary before I set it, but it becomes much less about the adherence to the boundary and much more about my willingness to have a dialogue with him, to have a conversation with him about it. 99.9% of the time, when an individual feels heard, the behavior and the actual boundary becomes much less important to them. The adherence of the boundary comes out of the spirit and the energy of cooperation. So Catherine's saying, I love this, and I don't know how to use this when my 5-year-old refuses to wear clean clothes, and she refuses to brush her teeth before we go to school. Reasoning doesn't work at all. She has sensory issues and refuses and gets so upset. So I keep teasing that I'm going to do a special class, maybe it will be in these next 4 weeks, about boundaries where toddlers and teenagers and special needs children are concerned, and maybe spouses, because they're all under the same umbrella, right? The same thing that I just talked about with my teen, I could be talking about with a toddler, right? Because the toddler years and the teen years mimic each other. Why? Because in the toddler years and the teen years, the brain is going through so much development, and there's a lot of wiring and rewiring and alignment happening and misalignment happening. So with toddlers and teens, both of them are looking for their sense of self, their sense of autonomy. So a toddler not wanting to brush their teeth and a teenager not wanting to get off of screen time or wanting later curfew, it's all the same inner promptings. And so part of how to handle this is to know the developmental stages. So you need to know, as the mother of a toddler, that and 5-year-old is not a toddler, but any child under 7, let's say, as they get older, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, they move into a different developmental stage. But children under the age of 6 and teenagers are very developmentally similar. They're looking for their autonomy. This is the biggest description of a young child and a teen. They're looking for autonomy. So where your child is concerned, before you decide to set a boundary, you need to backtrack and really sit with what are your values and what is important to you. So I speak often of when my son was 5, very similar things. He wanted to wear what he wanted to wear, and he didn't want to brush his teeth. When you, as a parent, can put yourself in their shoes and really explore and contemplate your own values and decide where you want to invest your energy, this is going to take 99% of the angst away. So now that I have perspective and I'm looking back, and I think any one of us, when you think about it and you move back, or like I like to say for any of you who have done my work, rise up to the top of a mountain and look down at your situation to give yourself perspective. Does it really matter if your child goes to school in stained clothes? Just be with that for a moment. It might really matter to you. I'm not putting out a value judgment that it's better if your child doesn't go with stained clothes or does. I have no value judgment on it. I'm asking you and anyone else that's watching, you think of a similar situation in your own world as the one Catherine had shared in her world, and ask yourself the same question. Maybe you're having power struggles with your child about screen time, throwing, hitting, brushing teeth, what they're going to wear to school, teenager, curfew, screen time, media, your husband picking up his socks off the floor, whatever is going on in your world, use this as a moment. I'm going to work with Catherine. So first you have to decide, now my son's 15. I look back when he was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Do I remember what he wore to school? Does it matter? In my world, it wouldn't be important to me. If it's important to you, then we're going to work through that so that you're able to work with your child in a way that both of you can get your needs met. But first of all, you got to ask, how important is this? So for me, with anything besides safety, whether it's eating, not wanting to eat broccoli at dinner, not wanting to brush their teeth, I chose to look at a week's worth of time, a month's worth of time, rather than getting so microscopic about these, whether you're going to brush your teeth that night. It was much more important to me that I created the inner energy and my son's inner dialogue is going to be as he grows up is whatever dialogues we're having at the time. So it was very important to me that we had connection over power struggles. So I would look at a week's worth of time. If my son is 5, 6, 7, 8, and he's not brushing his teeth every morning and every evening, how important is that? We're fortunate. We're not in a third world country and we have amazing, there's toothpaste, dentists. Over the time, what worked for me is to create the situations where when my son did brush his teeth, 99% of the time, it was a great experience. Yes, were there some times when I would say to him, in life, sometimes we need to do what we don't feel like doing. Is that an important life skill to learn? Absolutely. But do I need to teach him that to the detriment of our connection and to the detriment of his experience? So in this question with clothes and teeth brushing, it's a very common question because as parents, we haven't really been taught how to set effective boundaries. And so what we're so afraid of is that we're afraid that if we back off and back away from having them brush their teeth twice a day or eat all their vegetables or all these different things, get to bed on time, we're afraid to loosen up the reins a little bit because we're afraid that's going to put us over on the side of being permissive. And it is true that children need boundaries. They need consistent boundaries and they need firm boundaries. And so this can get very confusing. So I'm not suggesting that you need to move over to the side of permissiveness. I'm simply suggesting that you become very aware of what your own values are and be true to those values, and then allow your child to have an input into that. So let's say you had decided it was important for your child to wear something clean that next day, and you know about them that they're going to want to wear their own thing, or they're not going to want to brush their teeth. You already know this about your child. So there's a couple of things that practices that we want to incorporate where boundaries are concerned. So one of those is the question that I still to this day, 15 years later, especially in the toddler years, the younger years, and now these teenage years, ask a lot in a day. I might ask this question 5 times in a day, 25 times in a day. How can we make this work for both of us? That question engenders cooperation. And when you ask that question, and when you take the time to allow your child to answer, even if the answer, so how can we make this work for both of us? Of course, your child is going to first say, how can we make this work for both of us? Let me not brush my teeth. Let me wear what I want to wear to school. Let me stay out past curfew. Let me not turn off this media. Of course, they're going to say that first. So then you smile. You say, of course you want to do that. There are times that I don't want to brush my teeth. I totally understand that. And that's not working for both of us. That's a great answer, and that works for you. How can we make this work for both of us? Because what you want to start hearing here is that this isn't about the compliance to the boundary as much as teaching our children or our spouse or our coworker how to be a contributing member of our community. Our family is a community. Our work situation is a community. So we're seeking to learn to be contributing members. So it becomes much less important whether your child actually brushes their teeth, and much more important that they feel like they are a contributing member to the community of your home, your family, that their voice matters. What they have to say is heard. This takes more time. This brings me to self-care. This is why I'm saying that to me, especially in parenting, but in any kind of intimate relationship, whether it's in your marriage, your coworker situation at work, any kind of intimate relationship, the better you can take care of yourself, the more bandwidth you are going to have to come to the situation when another individual is not meeting your need, whatever your boundary is. If you have a boundary that you want your child not to hit their brother or to brush their teeth or to wear something specific to school, you have a need. And 9 times out of 10, the other person might not be in the same place at the same time to match up and meet your need. And so in those situations where you have a need, but it's not being met by the other individual in the way you want it to be met, you need to have the bandwidth to create intimacy in that moment. It's easy to create intimacy when the other person is compliant and cooperative. But how do you work with your own self if you wake up in the morning and you're intending to go to the gym, but you don't feel like it? Do you have an adversarial relationship with yourself, or do you have a cooperative relationship with yourself? So this starts inside of ourselves, of learning that the old authoritative ways, threats and punishment and criticism and blame and shame, are not the qualities of skills that we want to reach towards in our toolbox. Instead, we need to create a toolbox that engenders cooperation, appreciation, acknowledgement, working this out for both of us, for all of us. So my number one question in my home is, how can we make this work for all of us? How can we make this work for both of us? I'm going to give you 4 or 5 more skills right now that I want you to start practicing before class starts. So one of the reasons that I wanted to teach this class is to let you all know that I'm going to be teaching, as I said before, a 4-week class so that we can really dive in more of these specific situations like Catherine was talking about, and really get into the specific situations so that you can work through your own triggers and what's coming up for you, and simultaneously learn to create the intimacy with whomever you're creating the boundary with. So the first class that I taught, the one that we just got finished with, is called From Conflict to Connection, From Battles to Boundaries. You guys can go, you can purchase that for those of you who were not already in that class. tons of great dialogue on the Facebook page, on the PDFs. And this class is going to take that conversation to the next level and really create the intimacy and true connection that we are seeking to have with those around us. So I'm going to give you maybe 4, 5, 6 practices right now that you can begin to practice today before we start class next Wednesday. So today, I want you to think about the other individuals in your world. For any of us who are parents, think about your children. Any of us married, think about your spouse. Think about the individual that you really have challenge with where boundaries are concerned. I want you to, first and foremost, begin to develop an I and an energy and a heart for appreciation and acknowledgement. When you can make 90%, 95% of your articulation, your communication, your dialogue, your energy, both inwardly within yourself and to those around you, positive, growthward, intimacy-inducing, collaborative, communicative, open-hearted, not defensive, not armored. When you can make 90, 95%, but start wherever you are. Maybe you're at 5%, and today you're going to go for 6%. It doesn't matter where you are. So I'm saying 95% as an ultimate way of life, but you start where you are. If you're at if only 3% of your conversation with your child right now is positive, and 97% of your dialogue with your child is ridden and fraught with conflict, then today you're going to move from 3% to 3.1%, because that 0.1 addition of intimacy-inducing conversation is going to feel so good inside of you that you are going to gravitate and yearn more towards the intimacy-inducing conversations. So what do I mean by that specifically? Intimacy-inducing conversations and energy are conversations and energy that start with, I so appreciate you. I so acknowledge you. So I'm thinking of my son last night. He's a freshman in high school. He just finished his first semester in high school, and he had brought up his grades from C's and B's at the middle of the term to A's by the end of the term. So last night, out of the blue, before he was, starting back at school today, I made sure I said to him, I so acknowledge you that you brought your grades up. I so acknowledge you, not so much that I care about your grades as much as I so notice and appreciate the way that you put in the effort to bring those grades up. That must have felt good inside of yourself to know that you up-leveled your investment. You did the extra work required to bring up your grades. That must have felt so good. And he goes, it did feel good. And then he's at an art school. So he's been trying to decide whether to film this music video that was voluntary. And we had been talking about it over the break, whether he would do it, whether he wouldn't. And he ultimately decided to do it. And so I said to him, I so acknowledge you, not that you decided to do it, but I so acknowledge you that you really thought it through over the break and that you came to a conscious decision. He also, at the times that he does make his bed, I always point that out. Oh, I so appreciate that you made your bed this morning. Or if I hear him talking to a friend and he's being particularly helpful or sensitive, I always point that out. I appreciate how thoughtful you were to Jane when she was going through blah, blah, blah. Oh, I so appreciate how thoughtful you were. Or, I said to him, because I had not been feeling well over the break, and I said, oh, I so appreciate how you kept bringing me orange juice over the break, So this way of looking for what is going well, I'm always looking for the most minute examples that I can give him so that he feels seen, so that he feels heard, so that he feels valued, so that he feels he matters. These are the qualities that every one of you watching right now wants in your own life. You wanted this when you were a child yourself. You wanted nothing more than to be seen, to be heard, to know that you mattered, to know that you were worthy, to know that you were deserving, to know that you mattered, to know that you are valuable, to know that you are divine, to know that you are so much more than a human being. You are a spirit that has come here with unique contributions and characteristics, and that you matter to someone. Your children, your coworkers, your spouse, your sister-in-law, your brother-in-law, all want to know the same thing. So when you take the time, Louise is saying encouragement is such a powerful tonic. It is. It is a basic human need of ours. It is as necessary as this water. The need to know that we are connected, that we are not separate and existing on our own, is so important. It's as important as breathing. So think back to what you all wrote in the chat box when we were first starting. You were writing that your upbringing was fraught with conflict and the need for compliance and this energy that didn't make you feel intimately connected to those around you. So I'm suggesting that you make it your everything to first and foremost every day. So I'll show you all, as you know, for those of you who know me, I'm a big journaler. Any day you can open up into my journal and you will see that this is a big part of self-care. I make lists of the things that I appreciate about myself, the things that I acknowledge about myself, the things that I'm grateful for in my life. So acknowledgement, appreciation, gratitude, observing, witnessing, compassion. These are the elements of self-care. And when you create a relationship inside of yourself that is built upon self-compassion, self-talk that is kind and connective, self-talk that induces inner intimacy, when this is the foundation of your own internalized voice and your own internalized relationship with yourself, that is what you will then project onto those around you, especially your children. So, for instance, if you were raised with, as we said earlier, with an authoritative, punitive, shaming, blaming, you're either going to project that onto your children or you're going to go to the opposite end of the extreme. And I'm suggesting that self-care and these ways of being with ourselves will rewire the neural pathways in your own brain. And it's important to rewire your own internal neural pathways, because whatever is your own internalized voice, your own internalized energy, your own internalized neural pathways, that's what you're going to project onto others. So if you are unclear and confused about your boundaries, that is what you're going to, even though your words may say, we're going to brush our teeth now, but if there's underlying confusion, then the energy that you're going to emit to someone else is going to, you're going to call back to you that conflict. So when you get clear inside of yourself and then you communicate from that place of clarity, you're going to attract a different dialogue and conversation back to you. Is that clear? So I want to leave you with appreciation, acknowledgement. I'm going to take 1 second, little quick nanosecond, to explain to you the difference between appreciation and acknowledgement. It's subtle, but I find that it's important. Acknowledgement is observing, witnessing, communication, that which someone does. Appreciation is observing, witnessing, communicating the qualities of being. So it's the difference of the qualities of being and the qualities of doing. So when I speak to my son and I say, I so acknowledge that you brought up your grades. I acknowledge the effort that you put in. I acknowledge the investment that you put in. I appreciate the way that you were so sensitive to your friend. I appreciate the way that you were so kind to me when I didn't feel well. I appreciate that you gave me a hug before you left for school this morning. I appreciate the qualities of being. I acknowledge the qualities of doing. What if my child does not want to put in the extra effort? My daughter wants out of English honors to regular English, and I don't agree. So this is a great question, similar in my home. First of all, you want to not look at it as black and white. I'm sure that there are many, 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 many moments when your daughter does put in the extra effort. And so it's very important that we don't create blanket ideas about ourselves or each other. So I would first really connect with her and look for the ways, times, and spaces that she does put in extra effort. Maybe it's not going to be about English and English honors, but maybe it's going to be about making her bed in the morning or doing some kind of extra homework or an extra credit project or whatever it might be. She helped with the dishes, whatever it might be. I would really start looking for the ways that she does put in extra effort, and I'd acknowledge that so that she connects with the good feeling that comes inside of herself when we put in the extra work. So the good feeling is her own reward. It's not the grade. It's not the pride from you. It's helping her connect to the inner feeling inside of her that she's going to get when she chooses. So first, I'd point out, I'd look for ways every day to be pointing this out. And second, I would really have lots of conversations with her about this English class. I have had many with my son about his biology class, whether he really is able to stay in honors, whether he is choosing that. The same I was mentioning to you all about this film project that was voluntary. I did share with him that in my value system, I said, I don't care whether you enter it into the festival or not. I don't care whether you enter it into the competition or not. But my value system would say to go and do that extra film because you will learn something from the experience and your takeaway will be what you learned. So as I was pro having my son do this extra film, but I wasn't looking for his compliance. I wasn't attached to him doing it. It lines up with my value system. But it was also important and more important for me to help him really consciously think it through and be able to sit with his own consequences. So your daughter will have certain consequences. If she does do the class and she makes great grades, she's going to have extra GPA points. If she doesn't, there's all sorts of other lessons and learnings involved here. It's a plethora. It's a gold mine of many, many, many different conversations and learnings because she's learning to see what she values and what's important to her. And all of that would be utterly fascinating to me and much more interesting to me than me getting my own way, right? Because I could have outpowered my son to some way, shape, or form or degree that he probably would have. I have a pretty compliant son, so he probably would have done the film. But that's not what I was after at all. So you have to simultaneously detach yourself from being attached to her doing it, still though speaking up for your value system, just like Catherine could be saying that to her daughter about brushing her teeth or wearing something to school. She can say to her daughter, you know, in my value system, I wear clean clothes every day. That doesn't have to be your value system, but as a parent, she doesn't have to shy away from saying to her daughter, I value wearing my clean clothes. You don't have to, but let her daughter know what the values are, but not attached to making her daughter do it to be compliant, or she'll end up rebellious, right? So I would go for all the dialogue that is so rich, because this is a great question, because then you're going to create the intimacy with your daughter that every daughter is looking for from their parent. And then your daughter will come to you and she will ask your advice. Mom, I'm thinking about dropping out of this class. What do you think? I'm thinking about going out with this boy. What do you think? I'm thinking about becoming friends with this girl. What do you think? Because you offer her the dialogue, you offer her the intimacy, you offer her the rich connection. Of course, she's going to want that. We all want that from each other, right? That's why we have great girlfriends and guy friends, because we want to be able to bounce our. That's why this class is so important, because this is all like-minded problems and challenges and issues, and we're all talking about it to create this momentum and this energy that is solution oriented and creates more intimacy in our lives. So let's see, I want to answer one more question, then I want to let you guys go. When the kids constantly push back on basic requests like screen time, bedtime, dinners, getting dressed, it becomes exhausting. Almost every interaction becomes a battle. Okay, excellent. So, excuse me. So first of all, again, this is why I'm such a huge advocate of self-care. I cannot stress this enough, because you are right. It can be exhausting because kids push back. So to have the extra bandwidth, take any class I've ever taught on self-care, just saying. Second, expect the pushback. I'm telling you, when you, especially as a parent, begin to house this idea of boundaries in a different way, when you begin to mentally, emotionally, spiritually house this pushback in a different way inside of yourself, I promise you, hear me, I promise you, it will not exhaust you. Not only will it not exhaust you, it will enliven you. I'm speaking also to Narelle, because I know you have this with your toddlers around fightings. Anyone with little young ones has sibling rivalry and all those power struggles. I'm talking about all of this arena that Jennifer is talking about. Great question. And Selena is saying they push back because there's not an open dialogue. And to have an open dialogue takes more bandwidth. So I'm just telling you up front, it takes a lot more bandwidth to go through what I was just talking to Amma about with her daughter and English honors. It takes a lot more bandwidth. That is accurate. It takes a lot more bandwidth to allow my son to push back where screen time is concerned. When you house it in your consciousness, of course there's going to be pushback. You begin to welcome the pushback. When you welcome the pushback itself changes energy. So hear that again. When you welcome the pushback, when I tell my son 10 o'clock curfew, I'm expecting a text from him asking for 11 o'clock. I'm just expecting it. It doesn't do anything for me but bring a smile to my face. My son is very creative. He has ADD. It's very challenging for him and academics. I'm expecting he's not going to want to do his biology homework. I'm just expecting to walk in his room and the bed isn't made. This isn't something that I am bracing myself about. It is something that I am welcoming. Why? Because I want the intimacy. I want the connection with him. And what would have brought intimacy in my home growing up if my mom had had the bandwidth to sit down with me and talk to me about things. I guarantee you, it's much less about the brushing of the teeth or the siblings hitting each other when you expect toddlers hit. Toddlers throw things. Toddlers speak back at each other in mean ways because they're learning to articulate their emotional needs. They have no articulation yet. Teenagers push back. If you have a screen in your home, of course a teenager is going to push that boundary. Who the heck wants to, when I'm binge watching, I don't want to turn something off either, right? So when you can embrace and welcome the pushback, your child doesn't feel that you're their adversary. Your child feels welcomed into an environment and into an energetic and into an atmosphere that is inclusive of all of their warts and all of their complaining and all of their pushback. And so when my son says, Mom, you're the strictest mom. I have a thing. He rides the metro and I just have a thing. He just can't ride the metro alone. It's my thing. Of course he wants to ride the metro alone. He's 15. He wants to be grown up. He wants to feel like a man, right? So I'm going to expect that 100 times he's going to ask me over and over and over and over again, come on, Mom, you're the meanest mom. He tells me the list of every girl that's younger than him that gets to ride the metro alone, and every mom that's nicer, So I'm expecting that. And I talk to him about that. And he knows it has nothing to do with I don't trust him. It's that I don't want to put him in harm's way. And I can completely understand that I'm a big drag. I get it. I'm a big drag in his world where that is concerned. But what we do have is the intimacy. And I would not trade that for anything. Okay, great question. You see, we could stay on here for an hour and a half. Do I lose authority if I physically smile at a pushback, if it is a loving smile? That's a great question, and only you know your own child. So I wouldn't do anything that would humiliate, embarrass, make your child feel separate from you. I would do whatever is engaging, whatever is like a hug, whatever would be the equivalent. It's perfectly fine to smile. It depends on where inside of yourself that smile is coming from. And for you, it sounds like you're saying it's a loving smile. For me, yeah, I am expecting it. And it doesn't exhaust me. It not only doesn't exhaust me, I actually look at it because I want to be that presence. This is going to make me sensitive. This touches me. I want to be the presence that my son can come to. And that does not mean I always agree with him. And it definitely does not mean he always gets his way. Part of boundaries is learning to be a contributing member of the family. And sometimes we get our way and sometimes we don't. This is reminding me of Barbie's question on the Facebook page from our last class about her son and complaining in the mall. There are times that our children need to learn to be a contributing member of the family. Sometimes we get our way, sometimes we don't. But if you have a foundation where 95% of your conversation is intimacy inducing, then it's going to be much easier for them to swallow the moments when they're not getting their way, And I point out the moments when I'm not getting my way. I always point that out too to my son. Oh, look, I'm choosing to go see the movie you want to go to today. That I have no interest, let's say, in, I won't say the names of half of these movies, but I have an interest in being with you. So it's my pleasure to put my need aside today and go to the one that interests you because I love being with you, you see. So this is what we're going to be talking about into the, so you're saying you think it would loosen up the situation, but don't know whether he would still take you seriously. So try it, experiment with it over time. Remember, if you take yourself seriously inside of yourself, this is all about your inner energy. And it's a process over time of how to cultivate the inner energy. I didn't always have this inner energy where if my son was pushing back about screen time, I would have the bandwidth to talk to him about it. I didn't always have that. I've cultivated it over time. So I want you to practice cultivating this inside of your own self. You have to cultivate it inwardly. And that's what we're going to be talking about over these next 4 weeks, is how to create the inner workers, your in-laws. This, I'm telling you, is a life-changing class, because at the end of it, you are going to walk away with skills and practices and tools to create real intimacy in your relationships. And I am telling you, just as you as a child wanted nothing more than to be seen and valued and held on to your own divinity and held on to your own sense of worth, your children and everyone in your life wants to have reflected from your eyes to theirs, that they can keep their divinity intact. They can keep their sense of worthiness intact when they are around you. They can keep their dignity intact when they are around you. And all of these examples were so perfect, whether your child is hitting another child, not wanting to brush their teeth, not wanting to take an honors class, not wanting to go to school, whether your husband or your spouse isn't wanting to, comply with something you've asked. Any one of these, I can tell you, within every one of these situations, that other individual wants to have their dignity intact from your eyes to theirs. And that is what we're going to work on in this class. Dignity, worthiness, divinity, connection to your essence, your source, your value, your abundance, your prosperity, your essence, your true nature, so that your children and those in your world can see that reflected from your relationship with them. So I hope that every single one of you signs up for this course, and that every single one of you asks a friend to sign up for this course. When you do it with another mom friend, guaranteed your parenting experience will exponentially expand. Email me if you have any questions. It's 4 weeks, starts next week, and probably be the richest 4 weeks of your year. It will set you up for real inner connection. So thank you all. I'm going to put the link one more time. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The class will be filled with many, many, many examples from my life, things that I've learned. So I utterly can guarantee you, you will create a deeper inner connection with your own relationship with yourself. And then it cannot not extend out to your children and those around you. So thank you all. It's my deep pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you all in class. Please go sign up now before you do any other thing and talk yourself out of it, because it's going to be a really rich class. All right. See you all in class. Bye, everyone.